On today's Murder, She Wrote podcast, not one, but two episodes of Murder, She Wrote. One where Jessica is a jury foreman and must solve the crime from within, and the other where she's back in Cabot Cove and must figure out who poisoned the strawberry preserves. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Murder, She Wrote podcast, where I watch every single episode of the hit 80s/90s show Murder, She Wrote, starring three-time Academy Award nominee and five-time Tony Award winner Miss Angela Lansbury. Today I'm going to be talking about Season 2, Episodes 13 and 14. As always, if you're new to the Murder, She Wrote podcast, I spoil everything there's to spoil about the episode, the murder of the suspects, everything in between. So, if you've not seen these two episodes, then I encourage you to get out your Season 2 DVD. And it is disc 4, and these are the first two episodes on that disc. If you do not own the DVDs, the show is available for free on NBC's Peacock app, and as well as IMDb TV, which you can find on any Roku streaming device, including the Roku TV. Whew. Alright, because there's going to be spoilers, so in just a few minutes. It has been forever and a day since I have talked about Jessica Fletcher and Murder, She Wrote, and I apologize. Happy belated Father's Day, happy belated happy day of first summer, and happy 4th of July. I am so sorry that I haven't recorded an episode in a long time. I've kind of been enjoying the summer with my friends, and then I had a doctor's appointment, so it's kind of been one thing after another. Also, my internet's been a little wonky lately, so kind of messing up, technology, love it or hate it. So, I have several reasons for covering two episodes. One is because I haven't done an episode in a long time, and the second reason is that although Trial by Error, the first episode I'm going to talk about, is really great and is a wonderful standalone episode to do for the podcast, I can't talk about it for a very long time. I don't know why. I love it, but the plot is really straightforward, and trying to talk about it for a long period of time is... And I just decided to combine it with the next episode that's hilarious, keep the home fries burning, so that we would have two episodes to talk about. I hope everybody had a wonderful first day of summer. Hope everybody had a good Father's Day out there. And I also hope that everybody had a really wonderful 4th of July. I did. I got to spend it with my friends, whom I love so much. As always, thank you for your support. Episode out, like I said, one thing and another. Also, to the person who commented on the last episode, Murder by Appointment Only, that said they could not hear my intro, I apologize. What I do is I play the theme music from the DVD menu, and I guess sometimes you can't hear me when I do that. So I guess I'm not going to do that anymore, because it's just too complicated anyway, and I record my audio on my laptop, and I would like to find a microphone to try to transfer it to my desktop, but I'm not very tech savvy, so I don't know what would be the best one, but this seems to be working this way. But if you guys want the theme music in, just please let me know if you want it back in, or if you'd rather have it out, because I don't know. But like I said, I've been enjoying summer. I hope everybody else is enjoying their summer. It's completely different than last year because we can actually enjoy the summer now. And I went swimming with my best friend. Sorry, that was my phone. Anyways, I was saying, sorry, that was my phone. I went swimming with my best friend and I had the time of my life. It was just so fun to be out in public with other people. And I'm fully vaccinated, no symptoms from that. Hopefully everybody else is doing really well as well. Now, spoilers, because here we go. Sit back, relax, and if you have seen these two episodes recently, then sit back, relax, and enjoy, and see if we notice the same things. If not, and you remember these episodes, again, sit back and relax. We notice the same things. All right. The episode starts off with a car crash. And this is the only time that I firmly believe that they should not have put the opening credits here. I mean, I understand editing, get them out of the way, but you could have done it when they were, well, later in the episode. But they have the opening credits over this terrible car crash, and they have to... The car crash is so bad that they have to use, like, the jaws of life to get this person out of this car. There's a man who is the husband, and the wife is trapped in the car, and he's like, forget about me, get her, save her. And then he was like, she never wore her seatbelt. I always told her that she should wear her seatbelt, but she thought that she would be trapped, and she would never listen to me. So they have to use the jaws of life and a bunch of other tools to get the door open to get this woman out of this car. And she basically, as she gets out, she's put on a little gurney to go to the hospital. She says, I don't understand. Why? And he goes, it was the kid on the bike. I swerved to get away from him. I barely missed him. I'm so sorry, babe. I'm so sorry, honey. And they get into the ambulance and they go to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor informs him that his wife has survived the car crash but could be paralyzed for the rest of her life. His response to this is, oh my God, and runs out of the hospital to a bar called The Last Resort. What a great name for a bar, huh? The Last Resort. So he sits down at the end of the bar next to a woman, and she's like, oh my God, have you been in a fight? And the bartender says, have you been in some kind of accident? And she says to the bartender, she says, Jerry, give me a towel. And that's the bartender, Jerry. And she says, seriously, did somebody try to beat you up? And he was like, no, the bartender was right. I was in an accident. Suddenly a man comes staggering in who looks like he's already drunk, but apparently that's just the way the actor acts. He comes in and he sits down at a table, and Jerry, the bartender, goes over to him and he goes, who's that over at the bar with Bonnie Anderson? That's the woman at the bar, apparently. And the bartender says, I'm not sure. He goes to fill his order, and the man is proceeding to tell Bonnie about what happened that night. And he's like, it was the kid on the bike. I tried so hard to swerve to get out of the way, and my wife may be paralyzed. Oh, that's so terrible, she says. And Jerry goes back and gives Mr. Detweiler, that's his name, a drink, and he says, seriously, Jerry, who's that man over there with her? And he says, will you give her a break, Mr. Detweiler? The man's wife and him were in a car accident. He may lose her tonight. And then Jerry goes back over to the bar. Eventually time goes by and it gets late. And Bonnie's like, can a friend make you a cup of coffee? And he's like, no, I really shouldn't. I will go for that cup of coffee. So as they leave, Mr. Detweiler puts his face to the wall and puts his back toward them so that they can't see him. And then as soon as they leave, he gets up, staggers over to the bar and says, you see what that is, Jerry? Now that's what I call real comfort. Then he says, give me another drink. I gotta make a phone call. He goes over to the payphone, picks it up, dials. We cut to a house where two men are playing cards, and the phone rings, and one of them gets up and answers it, and he says, is Clifford Anderson there? And the guy says, yeah, who's asking? Johnny Detweiler. So the friend tells him that Johnny Detweiler is calling, and he picks up. Clifford Anderson looks like a guy, looks like the villain in Popeye that is always trying to steal olive oil. Not someone you would think anyone would want to be married to, but apparently Bonnie is married to him. but they're legally separated at this moment. He picks up the phone and he says to Mr. Duttweiler, he goes, "What do you want, idiot?" I'm sorry. What a way to greet the person on the other end of the phone. "What do you want, idiot?" Anyway, he tells Mr. Anderson, he says, Bonnie just went off with some guy here at the bar. He's like a real strapping young man. And he says, "Thanks for telling me," and slams the phone down. And then he says, "Trial separation, huh? Wanting some time to herself, huh? Bonnie's gone off with some guy. I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna kill her." So the episode freezes on his face, and we cut to the courthouse, which is the one and only courthouse used on the Universal backlot in such wonderful films as Back to the Future, Parts 1 and 2, as well as Ghost Whisperer, Gremlins, Twilight Zone, and so many other films and movies. And it's painfully obvious because the benches are the same, and I just recognized it instantly. This is yet another episode, kind of like Jessica Behind Bars, where we are at one location instead of multiple. This is the only time in the series that I know of that Jessica has to solve the crime without actually knowing the victim and or murderer at all. Normally, it's her niece, a student, or someone she knows, an old friend or something. Some way or another, she knows them, but in this case, she has no personal stake in this whatsoever. She's just a jury foreman. The jury has to basically come up with, was it self-defense, because we find out that Mr. Clifford Anderson is dead, and that the man whose wife was in the car accident at the beginning of the episode, his name is Mr. Mark Reynolds. There's a trial like this. Like, I've never known that there was a trial where you had to determine if the person was acting in self-defense or he was not guilty at all. So the jury is to deliberate, and the jury foreman is Jessica, and we have a who's who of 80s television. This is unfortunately Vicki Lawrence's final guest appearance on Murder, She Wrote, as she was very busy doing Mama's Family at this point in her career. Although Murder, She Wrote lasted until 1996, she then, right after Mama's Family, ended up doing a talk show, so she never made another guest appearance beyond this one, which is really sad, because she would have been fantastic as various different killers or characters. It would have been nice if she had come back as one of the killers, but she's like the voice of reason. We got Mr. Bentley, who believes that Mark Reynolds is guilty of sin, not only of killing Mr. Anderson, but also killing his wife, because we find out that she died from the injuries she sustained in the car crash. We have Mr. King, who's very old and has a cane. We have or actually his name is Mr. Corbin. Mr. King, or no, Mr. Lord, sorry, it's so hard to keep track of all their names. Mr. Lord apparently has some sort of radio talk show and wants to wrap it all up so that they can go. And Vicki Lawrence plays Jackie McKay. And we have Mr. Bentley, as I said, played by Brock Peters. We'll get to the guest stars at the end like we do. And we have Mr. Richards. And we have just a who's who of 80s guest stars, and they're just so good. I can't wait to see if they're in more episodes. But basically the gist of this is Mrs. Fletcher decides to go over the testimony and evidence. This is like in the style of 12 Angry Men or Perry Mason, pretty much. And she has no personal stake in it whatsoever, so So she goes over the evidence. First, she tallies all of them. All of them basically say, like 3 say guilty, 4 say not guilty, the other ones say self-defense, and then there's one undecided. Mrs. Fletcher, no surprise, is the undecided. She goes over the evidence, and this is what Mark Reynolds says on the stand. He says that him and Mrs. Anderson went to her house that night after they met at the bar. And it was all supposed to be random. They didn't know each other. He was upset, so naturally, of course, they make love because that happens on soap operas all the time. They think their wife or their husband is dead, so they have sex only for him to come back from the dead and have amnesia. And then they have sex, and then they don't know who the father of the baby is that they're pregnant with. How many times has that happened on several soap operas? Way too many to count on your fingers and toes, I can tell you that. But anyway, Clifford Anderson comes over, and he has a gun, and Mr. Reynolds wrestles with the gun, shoots a bullet into the wall by the fireplace, and then Clifford Anderson knocks him down, and he picks up the fireplace poker, hits him with it, and he dies instantly. Then they call the police, and that's that. Mrs. Anderson basically gets on the stand and says the same thing, that there is no room for doubt that that's what happened. But a hotel owner gets on the stand and says that he saw Mr. Reynolds at his hotel on more than one occasion. And he also saw Mrs. Anderson with him a couple of times as well, establishing that they did know each other at one point, prior to meeting at the bar. Everyone is basically leaning towards that it was self-defense. There's nothing in between. Mrs. Fletcher breaks up the evidence. She pisses them off. And then Patty gets up and goes, "We're 12 sensible people. We should be able to figure this thing out. That's what we're supposed to be here for." And then I believe one of them, I think it's Sally. No, Miss Collins has a boutique and she wants to hurry up and go home, and Sally thinks that he's like so cute he couldn't possibly lie. Jackie is kind of like neutral with whatever everyone else is saying, I guess. So finally Mrs. Fletcher gets to the testimony of the neighbor. She also uses Mr. Corbin's cane to basically demonstrate that if Mr. Reynolds had a broken collarbone from the car accident, there's no way that he could fight with a fireplace poker and a gun. He would have a hard time doing either one. Then when the neighbor gets on the stand, he mentions that it was an hour and a half after the ambulance arrived when both Mr. Reynolds and Mrs. Anderson said it was within 5 minutes that they called the ambulance. So they come up with the verdict that he is not guilty. That it wasn't self-defense, he's just not guilty of doing whatever. But it doesn't stop there, folks. These two did not have a snowball's chance in hell of getting away with what they actually did. So Mrs. Fletcher is able to figure it all out for herself. And this is what she comes up with. She has Mrs. Anderson's attorney, played by MacDonald Carey, who was the original Mr. Horton when Days of Our Lives first started in 1965, and he's very good as the attorney in this episode. They meet in a room with Mrs. Fletcher, and she basically lays everything out with the defense attorney, with the prosecuting attorney, Mr. Tom Cassidy, or Cassidy, something to that effect. So he wants Mr. Reynolds. He knows that Mr. Reynolds is guilty. Everyone believes, with the select few of some of the girls in the jury, believe that Mr. Reynolds is guilty of sin. He obviously killed his wife because he was a race car driver. He had the chance to stage the accident. So Mrs. Fletcher lays it all out for us as cleverly as she can. She says that there were two factors that both Mr. Reynolds and Mrs. Anderson did not factor in. Number one was the fact that Mr. Reynolds' wife, he had only been married to her for a year, and she held all the money and all the cards. He had no money on his own, even though he was a race car driver. Try to figure that. Apparently, I guess you don't make a lot of money when you're a race car driver. I don't know. Anyway, he staged her accident because only her side of the car was damaged, which is why she said, I don't understand why. He was basically asking her why she tried to kill him. And they had met prior. They were having a full-fledged affair. They went to the bar because the bartender was able to hear what they wanted him to hear to establish that they had no idea who each other was. It's unclear if the plan was eventually to kill Mr. Anderson, because what they didn't count on was Jerry Detweiler being in the bar. Since he had owed Cliff a bunch of debt, he felt that telling him about Bonnie going off with another guy would erase some of his debt. You had no idea, of course, it would end up with him being killed. When Mr. Anderson came over to Becky's house, she was alone because Mr. Reynolds had went back to the hospital to kill his wife. And he found her alone, and he kept demanding to know who the man was that she was having an affair with. She refused to tell him. There was a struggle. She picked up the fireplace poker and she hit him with it. Mr. Reynolds came back, and according to Mrs. Anderson, he said that it was very easy to kill his wife because, for the simple fact was that she was so weak from her injuries she sustained in the car accident that he just put a pillow over her face and she died instantly. So with that, they have all they need to know. Becky Anderson says that it was self-defense, and that seems to be good enough for the prosecuting attorney and her defense attorney. They decide to work out a deal. Mr. Reynolds goes up to Mrs. Fletcher and basically says, I heard that it was you who basically examined the evidence and came up with the not guilty verdict. I'll never forget you. And Mrs. Fletcher says, I suspect you won't. And then he's arrested before he can leave the courthouse and stares at Mrs. Fletcher like, what? WTF? So, again, by no means, I am no lawyer. I am no criminal expert whatsoever. But honestly, I have watched enough of the original Law & Order SVU, and the original Law & Order before that, as well as several documentary shows on investigation discovery, that they cannot get Mr. Reynolds for murder. There is no way, because I don't know how long of a time it's passed since the accident has happened, but the car was likely impounded because it was a straightforward accident. The man dodged something in his way, hit the utility pole, and that was that. The car was probably impounded, and there's no evidence left over to examine the car to see if that's exactly what happened. Second, all they have is Becky Anderson's word that he had come back from the hospital and killed his wife. Unless they exhume her body and try to find that there was suffocation, and that's how she died, that might be really hard to find. This is the 1980s we're talking about. But anyway, also the fact that Mr. Reynolds and Mrs. Anderson both lied under oath is a crime as well. Tampering with evidence, they can get him for that and for her too. Also, there's no way to prove that it was actually self-defense because she's lied already once, so who's to say that she's to be believed? Basically, the prosecuting attorney can basically pull apart her testimony by saying since she got caught, because Mrs. Fletcher is an awesome mystery solver, that she of course had to say that Mr. Reynolds killed his wife because if she was going down, he was going to go down with her. So it's basically her word against his, and there's no way to prove it. He would probably go to jail for evidence tampering and perjury, but that's about it. She would probably go to jail for murder and tampering with evidence and perjury. Anyway, this was a great episode, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the style of Jessica not knowing the people that were murdered or victimized in this situation, and that she had to solve it completely blind. And that happens in the next episode, which we're going to talk about right now. We'll go back and I'll tell you the guest stars after I'm done with the second episode. Alright, we're going to talk about Season 2, Episode 14, Keep the Home Fries Burning, air date January 19th, 1986. Boy oh boy, is this a hilarious episode. So we're back in Cabot Cove. A new restaurant has opened up, /hotel, called the Joshua Peabody Inn. This specific character of Joshua Peabody was introduced at the beginning of Season 2 in the episode Joshua Peabody Died Here Possibly. He's supposed to have fought in the War of Cabot Cove, Battle of Cabot Cove, or something to that effect. But according to Seth, he's just a local legend, he's not real, and trying to say he is ridiculous. There's apparently been only one diner in town to eat at, and that's Dixon's Diner, which I think is mentioned in the book series, but I'm not sure. But when the episode opens, it's completely abandoned. Also, your visual aid is, for this episode, is going to be all the jurors at the table in trial and error, and then Amos picking up the strawberry preserves off of the table, which I'll get to that. So, Seth is in this episode, and Amos Tupper is still the sheriff after his replacement in Sticks and Stones turned out to be a murderer. I covered that episode on my channel, go check it out. Well, from there, Seth decides to take Mrs. Fletcher, Jessica, to the new restaurant because they serve some really good breakfast and she needs a break from writing. And we get introduced to a strew of people. We first get introduced to Wilhelmina Fraser and her best friend Betty Fiddler, who are traveling from Salt Lake City. They decide to basically choose this and start automatically making fun of the different menus items. There's one called Eggs Benedict Arnold, and the bathrooms have Captain and Maiden on them or something. Amos Tupper is now eating there, so Dixon's Diner is kind of closed. We also get introduced to Mercil Hartthorne and Ebenezer, yes, Ebenezer McEmery, who are having breakfast together, and they are, two bickering old fools who just like to argue with each other, I guess. We also get introduced to a couple who want everything mapped out for them, like, what is the ETA on the toast? Like, estimated time of arrival. We get a unnamed black family, and it looks like none of them are credited, which is sad. And we get an annoying chef named Alan Dupree, who is trying to get out of his cooking contract and is not cooking, but there are other people in the kitchen that are cooking and making the food go out, so I don't know why he's an important factor. We also get introduced to Cordelia, who was a waitress at Dixon's Diner, but she has followed everyone to the Joshua Peabody Inn. So Betty and Wilhelmina are having the time of their lives, laughing at the food and everything, and she decides to order some strawberry preserves. And she says, I'm going to pig out, and don't you say anything. You know, I have a best friend named Betty. I love her dearly, but she would never do what this Betty does in this episode. Oh no, not even close. Love you, Betty. Anyway, so eventually Amos sees the strawberry preserves and marmalade on Betty and Wilhelmina's table as Wilhelmina goes to the restroom and takes it from their table to his. He puts a bunch of marmalade on the toast, and slowly Cornelia passes the strawberry preserves and marmalade around. The couple who are waiting for their toast decide they don't want it. Hawthorne spreads it all over his bread. It then gets passed to the unnamed black family, and then gets put at Beau's table from Dixon's Diner. He even goes into the kitchen to see what's going on, and the owner, Mr. Soltley, Ted Soltley, says he's probably wanting to see what a real kitchen looks like. And the sheriff says that his meal is on the house, and everything seems to be going well. Everyone finishes their meals, and everyone seems happy. Also, I forgot to mention that Cornelia is dressed up like Betsy Ross. So, out in the parking lot, the unnamed black family's son gets poisoned or falls down, and they get Seth, and a bunch of other people began falling down, like Mr. Hawthorne. Betty also falls down. Something is happening and they're not entirely sure what. Betty eventually dies, is the only one who dies, while everyone else is just mildly poisoned. Wilhelmina also falls down. So then, realizing something must be wrong with the restaurant, we get a food investigator named Margot Perry. She is really freaking hilarious, and I recognized her almost instantly from playing the role of Trudy, Dorothy's best friend from high school on The Golden Girls. She is really hilarious and a highlight in this episode. Mrs. Fletcher is trying to figure out what happened to everyone. And Miss Perry says, there's one in every town, one busybody who's always trying to make something out to be worse than it is. You spent way too much time in this town. So they test the food at the restaurant and shut it down for a while. Dixon's Diner becomes a hopping place because it's the only other place in town you can eat at. Again. And they determined that none of the food in the restaurant was the cause of everyone's strange illness. Basically, they deduced that the people who got poisoned ate the strawberry preserves, and Seth, Dr. Hazlitt, comes up with the thing that it was barbiturates that were put into the strawberry preserves. But the strawberry preserves are missing. They decide to confront a woman off-screen who makes the strawberry preserves and marmalade in her kitchen. Miss Perry's like, you literally have a woman who sells jelly and strawberry preserves out of her house? What is wrong with you people? I'm sorry, is this Mayberry? She's just so funny, I'm sorry. Alright, so we then get introduced to Wilhelmina's husband, Mr. Harrison Fraser III. He comes and finds out that his wife is okay, but her best friend Betty has died. He has more of a sad reaction to Betty dying than his wife being okay, making Mrs. Fletcher suspect that something's not right here. The cook is the obvious main suspect, Mr. Dupree, and Mrs. Fletcher says that she went to Paris and had a wonderful dish by his father. Unfortunately, in this case, the apple does not fall from the tree very well because he's not that good of a chef. He admits this when Mrs. Fletcher trips him up with different ingredients on a special dish, and she says, that's not the way that's prepared. You clearly are not a good chef. And he says, I know, that's why I've been trying to get out of my contract. He signed me up for 3 years just because I happen to have the same last name as my father. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm as good as he was. No one could ever be. He says, but as much as I wanted to stop working there, I wouldn't have poisoned people to get out of there. And he says, and I don't know what happened to the strawberry preserves. He then says that a strange man was in the kitchen looking into the dining room. He said that Dixon was back there, but somebody else who looked like they didn't belong there. Someone fancy in upper crust. Just then, by coincidence, Mr. Fraser comes in because he's gotten a ticket on his Rolls Royce. And Chef Dupree basically says, that's him. He was in the kitchen looking into the dining room. And he says, I assure you, I was not. I don't know what you're talking about. And Mrs. Fletcher decides to confront him and say, well, Mr. Fraser, it seems awfully strange that you reacted so strongly to your wife's best friend's death, but not the fact that your wife was alive and well. And also, it's easy to check if you were here yesterday. There's not that many Rolls Royces in Cabot Cove. Later that night, for some reason, Mr. Fraser decides to go to Mrs. Fletcher's house and tells her that him and Betty were having an affair, but she wanted him desperately to tell Wilhelmina. They were best friends. Yeah, definitely my best friend Betty would never do any of this stuff. And they decided to go on one last trip together before he broke the news to her. As far as he knows, Wilhelmina never found out. Eventually, Mrs. Fletcher is stumped. Seth comes up with an antidote to give to everyone, and the Black family's son survives, which I was so happy about. But Sheriff Tupper takes the vaccine first, even though he didn't eat any strawberry preserves. Meanwhile, since they determined that none of the food at the restaurant was the killer, Miss Perry's job is pretty much done. Mrs. Fletcher goes to Dixon's diner when, after Cornelia tells her that the last place the strawberry preserves were was on his table. She goes to the restaurant to ask him if he remembers where they were, and he says, no, I wasn't even thinking about them when I got up to go help the man and his son. So Mrs. Fletcher's stumped again until Miss Perry pays her bill with a credit card and decides to go. Mrs. Fletcher goes, of course you're going to pay with your credit card, as most people do. Oh my God, that's it. And then she leaves, and Miss Perry says, wow, she shouldn't spend too much time in this town. So she goes back to the Joshua Peabody Inn and looks through the receipts, and Mr. Soley, the owner, is like, what you doing, Jessica? And she goes, I'm looking for a credit card receipt. He's like, okay, just help yourself. So, once she gets the credit card receipt, she goes to the hospital, and the two, ETA couple want the vaccine, even though they didn't eat the strawberry preserves. And Mrs. Fletcher says, oh, but you're fine. You weren't exposed. You don't need it. Seth, I need you. And we don't know if the couple got the vaccine or not. So she goes into Wilhelmina's room, and she says, you're not leaving yet, are you? She said, I finally figured it out. And she has Sheriff Tupper come in as well. She says, I couldn't figure out the trajectory of where the strawberry preserves had come from, but I think I understand now. You knew about the affair your best friend Betty was having with your husband. See, the main factor that I didn't realize was that Amos is the one that started it all. He said, "What? Me, Miss Fletcher? But how?" I suspect that Wilhelmina put the barbiturates in the strawberry preserves, knowing that her friend Betty was going to splurge on them. What she didn't count on was you, Amos, taking the strawberry preserves off of the table and putting it on ours. But you didn't eat the strawberry preserves. You ate the marmalade. Cornelia picked up the strawberry preserves and put them to that couple who wanted the ETA on the toast. They said they didn't want it, so it was passed over to Hawthorne and Ebenezer's table. Hawthorne put a bunch of it on his toast and ate it. It was then passed over to that very nice black family. The son was the only one who put it on his toast. It was then passed over, finally, to Dixon's table, and that's where it stayed. You had to go back to get the strawberry preserves. You told the person at the cash register that you were going to leave a tip for the waitress, but you had already done that on your credit card. She said, "Well, of course I knew about my best friend and my husband. I thought if I eliminated her, we would be able to be together." Well, Harrison can't even stand to look at her, so he walks out of the room. And she goes, "I never meant to kill anybody else." But she does, and she gets arrested, and that's the end of the episode. Wow. I would have been safe because I don't like strawberry preserves. I really like this episode, but I don't understand the title, Keep the Home Fries Burning. I mean, nobody even eats fries in the episode because they're eating breakfast. So I would call this strawberry poison. I know, not clever, but it fits more. Okay, so let's go over the guest stars of the first episode, Trial by Error. And then we'll go over the guest stars of Keep the Home Fries Burning. We had David Aykroyd as the prosecutor. Let's see if he appears in more episodes of Murder, She Wrote. He is known for The Dark Secret of Harvest. I don't know. The original MacGyver, The Sound of Murder, and Dark Angel. He is still alive. His last known credit is 2009, The Best Bar in America. He was in The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, Captain America, and the Planeteers. Loved that as a kid. The Cosby Mysteries, Walker, Texas Ranger, and he will appear in 2 more episodes of Murder, She Wrote, so we'll go over more of his credentials when we get there. He was a really good attorney in this episode. We had Tony Bill as Mark Reynolds, our supposed murderer, and the dude on trial. He's still alive, and he is known for Flyboys as the director, The Sting, 5 Corners, and Going in Style. His last known credit as an actor is the show Leverage in 2008. He was on Law & Order Trial by Jury, Moonlighting, and this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He also appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's Presents, Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure, The Hotel, St. Elsewhere, Are You in the House Alone? What Really Happened to the Class of '68? The Man from U.N.C.L.E. So he had a good career. He was really good in this episode. It's a shame he wasn't in other episodes of Murder, She Wrote. Virginia Capers played Margot Webster, and that name sounds familiar to me. She died in 2004 at the age of 78. She is known for Howard the Duck, Fearless Bluers, Day Off, Big Jake, and The Toy. Her last known credit is 2003 in a TV miniseries called Kingpin. She guest starred on ER, The Haggertys, Poltergeist, The Legacy TV show, The Practice, Married with Children, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as Hattie Banks. Oh, the grandmother. Yeah, she was in this episode, but she really wasn't, like, her character wasn't a big deal. Knots Landing, Batman the Animated Series, 227, this is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. Alfred Hitchcock Presents Highway to Heaven, Dynasty, the original Amanda's. She was a really funny woman. I liked her. She was really, really great. It's a shame that she wasn't featured more in this episode. McDonald Carey played the defense attorney, like I said, Days of Our Lives. Let's see if this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote, because I'm sure he could, at that point, do a bunch of episodes. Okay, and he is known for, he died in 1994 at the age of 81. He is known for Days of Our Lives as Dr. Tom Horton. Shadow of a Doubt, Suddenly It's Spring, and his last known credit is, of course, Days of Our Lives, which he played on from 1965 to 1994. And he will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote, so we'll go over more of his credits when we get to that episode. Doreen Clark played the role of Becky Anderson, our murderer. She's known for The Warriors, Quantum Leap, Too Far to Go, and The Powers of Matthew Starr. Her last known credit is a TV series called Providence. She was on Chicago Hope. She guest starred in various episodes in Matlock, and she'll appear in a handful of other episodes of Murder, She Wrote. Oh yes, she appeared in Deadly Lady as Nancy. I believe she was the killer in that one too. But she looks so different in this one. So she's got one more episode before we'll go over the rest of her credits. John Cryer played the defense attorney for Mr. Reynolds. He is still alive. He is known for Masters of the Universe, Scandalous Compunction, Favorite Son, and the TV show Jag. His last known credit is great performances on PBS as the Prince in Roger and Hammerstein's Cinderella. I was unaware that they did that on there. He was in the original Law and Order. He was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the TV show, Batman Beyond, Walker, Texas Ranger, Jag, Pinky and the Brain, so he did a lot of cartoon voiceover work. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, RoboCop, the TV series, Major Dad, and he will appear in 2 other episodes of Murder, She Wrote, so we will go over more of his credentials later on. Gene Evans played the role of Otto Fry, the friend that answers the phone and gives it to Mr. Clifford Anderson. He was played by Gene Evans. He unfortunately passed away in 1998 at the age of 75. He is known for Ace in the Hole, The Steel Helmet, Operation Petticoat, and Park Row. His last known credit is from 1989 in a movie called Split. He guest starred in the spinoff of Murder, She Wrote, The Law and Harry McGraw, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Simon and Simon, and he was in We're Off to Kill the Wizard. Huh! I didn't recognize him. So this is his last episode of Murder, She Wrote as well. He guest starred in Heart to Heart, Charlie's Angels, the original, Rambling Man, the original Dallas, the original Incredible Hulk, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew Mysteries, Gunsmoke. So he had a wonderful career. Really good. Really, really good. Okay. Tom Ebbard played Josh Corbin, the guy with the cane that Mrs. Fletcher uses to demonstrate fighting over a gun and a fireplace poker. He unfortunately passed away in 1994 at the age of 85. He's known for The 7-Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe, Adam's Rib, The Girl Can't Help It, and Bred Up. This is his last known credit before his death. Wow. He was in Trapper John MD, Best of the West, Fantasy Island, the original, The Great Gatsby, The Virginian, Wagon Train, The Tom Everett Show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. He was really awesome. Really great actor. Gary Frank played one of the other girls named Mr. Callahan. He doesn't really get much to do either. He's still alive and he is known for Family, a TV series I guess, Remington Steele, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and Hill Street Blues. His last known credit is How to Have a Happy Marriage as a narrator in 2012. Like Father, Like Santa, a TV movie, House of Frankenstein, miniseries, Pacific Blue, Silk Stockings, LA Law, Batman, the animated series, Madlock, Hunter, Friday the 13th, the series, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, and this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. He was in Hotel, the original Fantasy Island, T.J. Hooker, The Love Boat, The Streets of San Francisco. He's had a very impressive career. I'm surprised I wonder why he's not acting anymore. Arlene Gallatin or something played Sally. She was like, oh, he's so cute. I totally believe him. She died, just this year in 1985. I am so sorry. She was so good. She is known for Hang 'em High, The In-Laws, Airport 77, one of my all-time favorite disaster movies, and That Girl. Since we just acknowledged that she died this year, I also want to extend my condolences to we lost a really great actor, Ned Beatty. He was in the Murder, She Wrote pilot movie as the very first detective that Jessica ever encountered and he let her help him solve the crime. He was such a wonderful actor, Oscar-winning actor for Network, Deliverance. He left a huge legacy behind, and he will be surely missed. And my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. He died last month. And I think this was a really talented young lady that we're talking about right here. I liked her. Her last known credit is in 2005 on The King of Queens. She guest starred on Madlock, In the Heat of the Night, Growing Pains, The Yogi Bear Show. She was a cartoon voicelist. Also The Law and Harry McGraw, Simon and Simon, The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Give Me a Break. She was in a lot of things. I mean, she was just so good. And I think she'll appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. So we'll go over more of her credentials. But I loved her. I loved Arlene in Airport 77. Alan Hall Jr. played Mr. Harris. He was another juror that pretty much didn't talk and get to do that much. He died in 1990 at the age of 68. He's known for Gilligan's Island as the Skipper, Hang 'em High, The Giant Spider Invasion, and Rescue from Gilligan's Island, which I just didn't notice him. You know, it was like they blended him in the background. They didn't do a very good job with his character. He also guest starred on the spin-off The Law and Harry McGraw, The New Gidget, Alf, Simon and Simon, Magnum P.I. This is the only episode of Murder, She Wrote. The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, The Castaways on Gilligan's Island, The New Adventures of Gilligan. Boy, he was always in that. He was on The Magical World of Disney in a handful of episodes. Just awesome actor. It's a shame they didn't give him much to do in this episode. We had Lorena Christoph as Allie Collins, the woman who owned the boutique, who wanted to hurry up and go home. She's still alive. She's known for Starship Troopers, Cellular, 2004, Babylon 5, and Star Trek The Next Generation. Her last known credit is Cellular as the ticket checker. I love that movie, but I don't remember seeing her. She guest starred on Any Day Now, NYPD Blue, Annieville Dollhouse, The Bold and the Beautiful is Pamela Geller, Babylon 5, and she'll appear in a handful of other episodes of Murder, She Wrote, so we will go over more of her credentials later on. And Vicki Lawrence, let me just check to make sure this is her final appearance on the show. I wish she had been in more episodes. Yep, this is her last guest spot on Murder, She Wrote. It's so sad. She made her first appearance in one of my favorite episodes in season 1, My Johnny Lies Over the Ocean. Alan Miller played Frank Lloyd. Lord. He's still alive and he's known for Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, Bad Words, and Brewster's Millions. His last known credit is Silicon Valley. He guest starred on ER, Mad Men, the original Law & Order, Ghost Whisperer, Law & Order Trial by Jury, Family Law, Judging Amy, LA Doctor, Chicago Help, NYPD Blue, Nightman, and he appears in a handful of other episodes of Murder, She Wrote. Oh, and he appeared in the episode Sudden Death. Oh, as Phil Krueger. I remember now. Sorry, it's hard to remember everything, guys. There's so much things to remember. Okay, we have Brock Peters as Mr. Thornton Bentley, who knew from the word go that Mr. Reynolds was guilty as sin. He could feel it in his gut, and so could I. He unfortunately passed away in 2005 at the age of 78. He is known for Soviet Green, Star Trek movie To Kill a Mockingbird, and Star Trek The Voyage Home. His last known credit is doing a voiceover for a video game called Bong War. He guest starred on Jag. He did some voiceover work in the Wild Thornberrys movie, Disney's Legend of Tarzan, Star Trek Deep Sea Nine, Samuel Jack, Johnny Quest, Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Mortal Kombat, Real Monsters, Captain America, Batman the Animated Series, Magical World of Disney, Cadney and Lacey, and this is the only episode of Murder, She Wrote. It's so sad. He could have done awesome in other episodes as well. He had a long career. He was even in the original Roots. I liked Roots. It was so good. And then we have Richard Sanders as Mr. Richards, who's another juror that doesn't really get much to do. He's just sort of there, and I recognized him almost immediately from Designing Women as that crazy character. And also from WKRP in Cincinnati, which is what he's known for, as well as Men of Honor, Day of the Tentacle. He's still alive, and his last known credit is 2006 in a short called The Delivery. Oh! And he was in Rose Red as Mr. Stratton, but I don't remember him in that, and I've seen that movie so many times. Simon, Designing Women, as Elmer Pierce, so good. Growing Pains, Night Court, and he was in We're Off to Kill the Wizard as the accountant. And he didn't really get much to do in this episode either. That's kind of sad, but he's a really funny character actor, and I really liked him. And last but not least for that episode, we have Gregory Warcult as Willie. I think he was just the guard that stood outside the door. Plan 9 from Outer Space. He's known for Plan 9 from Outer Space, The Edgar Suction, Every Which Way But Loose, and Ed Wood. His last known credit is Ed Wood, and he was in A Dog's Life, but I don't remember him. And he'll appear in 2 other ones, so we'll go over his credentials. Then, he unfortunately passed away at the age of 87 in 2015. So that's all the guest stars in that episode. Let's go to the home fries burning. I'm curious about some of them. And then we'll be done. Okay, we first have Sharon Archer as our murderer, Wilhelmina Fraser. She is still alive, and she is known for Happy Birthday to Me. That's what I thought. Yes! Point Blank, Star Trek, the original series. Her last known credit is The Young and the Restless as Dr. Grace Sundell. She was also on Days of Our Lives as Pamela Frocher. This is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. She also guest starred on Simon and Simon, the soap opera Texas as a Judge Wheeler, Quincy and Me, the original Incredible Hulk, Police Story, The Rockford Files, The Love Boat, Executive Suite TV series, Barnaby Jones, New Perry Mason, Marcus Welby, MD, McMullen and Wife, Mission Impossible, Love American Style, Gunsmoke. So she's had quite the career. I wonder why they haven't put her in a soap opera in a while, because she's a good actress. We have Norman Aiden as Mercer Hartthorne, one of the victims of the Strawberry Preserves. He passed away at the age of 87 in 2012. He is known for Back to the Future, Ed Wood, Toro, and Transformers the movie from 1986. His last known credit is the TV movie Our House in 2006. He guest starred on JAG, did some voiceover work on the Rugrats and Ah, Real Monsters, and he will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. So we will go over more of his credentials then. Well, credits, I mean. Next, Orson Bean played Ebenezer. He did not get poisoned, and Hartthorne thought he poisoned him. He died last year at the age of 91. He's known for being John Malkovich, Inner Space, The Hobbit cartoon version, 1977, and Anatomy of a Murder. Apparently, his last known credit is Grace and Frankie, but he's going to be in something that hasn't been finished yet, Fourth and Bobble. He guest starred on Superstore, The Bold and Beautiful as Howard, Desperate Housewives, Hot in Cleveland, Women's Murder Club, Commander-in-Chief, Seventh Heaven, Will and Grace, The King of Queens, Ally McBeal, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Diagnosis Murder, Ellen's show, sitcom, and he will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote. So we will go over more of his credits then. Gary Crosby plays the role of the owner of the Joshua Peabody Inn. He died in 1995 at the age of 62. He is known for A Private Affair, Girl, Happy with Elvis, Star Spangled Rhythm, and Hunter TV series. His last known credit is a TV miniseries called Lady Chatterley. He guest starred on In the Heat of the Night, Madlock, Days of Our Lives. This is the only episode of Murder, She Wrote. Cadney and Lacey, Simon and Simon, Rockford Files, Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew Mysteries, Wonder Woman, Original, Marcus Welby, MD, Emergency, Adam 12, Ironside, and The Magical World of Disney, Love American Style, Mayberry RFD, The Flying Nun. So he had quite the impressive career, and he was really good in this episode. Really enjoyed him. Okay. Whew. Anne Francis played the role of the hilarious Detective Perry, and I know she was on The Golden Girls. She died in 2011 at the age of 80. She was known for Forbidden Planet, Bad Day at Black Rock, The Satan Bug, and Honey West. That was a TV series, I guess. Her last known credit is the TV show Without a Trace. She was also on the 1990s version of Fantasy Island, Drew Carey Show, Home Improvement, Wings, Blake's Law, The Golden Girls as Trudy, and she will appear in... Oh, she played Louise McCullen in the original pilot movie. I knew that too. It's just hard to remember everything, and she will appear in one more episode of Murder, She Wrote, so we'll go over a couple more of her credits when we get there. Alright. Excuse me. The owner of Dixon's Diner was played by William Lucking, and I think he's going to appear in another episode if that's the only place to eat in Cabot Cove. He is still alive. He is known for Red Dragon, Cumberband in the Limey, and the World's Fastest Indiana. His last known credit is Murder in the First in 2014, Switched at Birth, Sons of Anarchy, Hustle, Cold Case, love Cold Case, The Division, love that show, Jag, Martial Law, Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, ER, X-Files, Pacific Blue, Walker, Texas Ranger, NYPD Blue, and he will appear in a handful of other Murder, She Wrote episodes as other people, not as Bo Dixon, so that's interesting. What happened to the diner? Did it close? I guess we'll find out. John McCook played the role of Mr. Fraser, who was having an affair with his wife's best friend. So we'll see what he's known for, because he looks so familiar to me. Sorry, the internet's a little wonky today as well. He's still alive, and I knew it. He is known for The Bold and Beautiful as Eric Forrester. He was also on The Young and the Restless, Magnum P.I., and codenamed Foxfire. He's been on The Bold and Beautiful since The Bold and Beautiful started in 1987. They also say that he's been on The Young and the Restless since 1976. He played the role of Lance Primus first, and is now playing the role of Eric Forrester because they constantly have crossovers. Let's see. He was on The New Leave It to Beaver, Newhart, Moonlighting, Simon and Simon, L.A. Law, New Love American Style, Highway to Heaven, and this is his only episode of Murder, She Wrote. Darn. He would have been so good in all these other ones. He also got started on the sitcom Alice, Magnum P.I., Fantasy Island, Hotel, Family Ties, Trapper John M.D., The Original Dynasty, Romance Theater, Heart to Heart, Three's Company, and Different Strokes. So he has quite the impressive career, and he's still going strong on The Bold and Beautiful. You go, dude. Alright, and Dana Presco played the role of Cornelia, and she looked familiar to me as well. She's known for Saturday Night Fever. Yes, I knew that she was in that. Even Stevens is the mom. Yeah, Out of This World and The Sopranos. Her last known credit as of this year is Truth Be Told. She guest starred on The Flash, Cold Case, The Sopranos, Crossing Jordan, Even Stevens as the mom, NYPD Blue, Clueless, the TV series, Hotel, The Love Boat, and this is her only episode of Murder, She Wrote. She was also on Mr. Belvedere, All My Children, loved All My Children growing up, I really did. Trapper John M.D., The Day the Bubble Burst. She was on General Hospital, One Life to Live, and she made her film debut in Saturday Night Fever, which they just put that on HBO Max, and I'm gonna watch it if my internet decides to cooperate. The chef was played by Henry Pullick II. He passed away in 2013 at the age of 68. He is known for Mork and Mindy, Murder, She Wrote, The Things Were Rotten, When Things Were Rotten, and Scott's Play. He will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote, so we'll go over more of his credits later, but he also provided several voices for the Smurfs. I love the Smurfs. Marcia Rod played the role of Betty, who unfortunately got killed by her best friend. She's still alive, and she's known for Little Murders, American Playhouse, Citizens Band, and the original 21 Jump Street TV show. Her last known credit was last year on Grey's Anatomy. She also was on The Young and the Restless as Maya Bloodworth in 2017. She was on Family Law, The ER, Home Improvement, Doogie Howser MD, Empty Nest, and she will appear in another episode of Murder, She Wrote, so we will go over more of her credits then. Okay, almost done. Oh, we are done. Okay, and that is all the guest stars. In our next episode, I will be talking about Coal Miner's Slaughter, which guest stars Megan Mullally before she was on Will and Grace. Thank you so much for your continued support. Sorry if this ran a little bit longer than usual, but I am still sticking with it, and I am bound and determined to get Season 2 done, and it's not going to take me the whole year. I promise, fingers crossed. Alright, have a nice day, night, depending on whenever you listen to this, and enjoy the summer, because it looks like this year is going by fast. Happy crime solving, and I'll see you in the next one.